Greetings from the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center in New Haven, Connecticut. After a one-year hiatus due to COVID, it's truly a joyful occasion to welcome visitors and museum patrons to the 16th Christmas Crèche exhibition at the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center, formerly the Knights of Columbus Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. As is the custom, there are many dozens of creches on display, more than 60 this year, with a theme centered on the biblical accounts of Jesus's birth and showcased in a variety of ways for viewers to enjoy. Several nativity scenes on display this year are from the collection of Father Timothy Goldrick, which he generously donated so that they may be a source of enjoyment and education to our visitors to the McGivney Center. He is affectionately known in his diocese of Fall River, and I'm sure beyond, as Father Christmas, and obviously for a very good reason. It's wonderful to welcome Father Goldrick through the miracle of the internet from his residence there in Fall River, Massachusetts, to discuss the exhibit as well as his lifelong fascination for nativity scenes. Father, welcome. It's a joy to have you with us in this way. You've presented several times in the past in person, but we're delighted that we're able to welcome you this way this year. Is it true that your interest in nativity scenes was from the womb?
Yes, I like to say that. I can't remember not being interested in the nativity. I can remember my grandfather, who was Azorian, Portuguese Azorian, had a little creche that he set up in the living room, and the figures were from F.W. Woolworth. Some were from Germany, some were from Italy, but it was Woolworth who set up a cottage industry in Germany to bring in paper mache creche figures for his stores, and he started that in a town called Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they sold out, and it became very, very popular in his store. So that's all that my grandfather had, was figures from the 5 and 10 cent store, which I still have. That's the one that I put up, that because for me that's the creche. Even as a first grader, I remember the pastor of the parish gave all the school kids cardboard fold-out nativity scene gift to everyone. So I got one, and I thought it was the most wonderful thing in all the world. I think I was in second grade when I got my first creche, and that was the beginning of it. I only had one nativity scene, like most normal people, until I met a woman who lived on Cape Cod in this little cottage by the sea. Her name was Anne. And Anne had been the wife of an Episcopal priest. And when they retired, they set up you might call it a Christian travel agency. And they traveled around the world several times, leading these pilgrimages. And Anne always chose as a souvenir a nativity scene, a creche from where she had visited. And she had them displayed in her house, and I heard about it, and I went over there. But, oh, that was the beginning. I was hooked. I never heard of anyone that had more than one nativity scene. After that, it just exploded.
Oh, that's a terrific story. And so you began collecting, and over time put together quite a collection. And as I said, you've been very generous to share it. You know, Father, how far back can we trace the image, the biblical story of the Nativity in Christian art?
All right, first with the biblical story, you'll find that the images that we use, nativity, you'll find those in the Bible, but they're not all in the same place. You have two accounts of the nativity in the Gospels. In Matthew, it's the story of the kings and the star, and then also in Luke, is the story of the shepherds. I meant to say the shepherds. So you put them both together. And then that's from the New Testament, from Matthew and Luke. But then there's a couple of figures that wandered in there from the Old Testament, and that would be the ox and the ass. They wandered in from the prophet Isaiah. And basically, Isaiah was saying that when the Messiah arrives, dumb animals like an ox or a donkey would recognize the Messiah. So sometimes in the very early creches, you'll see it's just the infant Jesus in the manger and an ox and an ass on either side of them. Just that. And it told them this nativity story, making the point through the prophecy from the Old Testament.
Interesting. And so when did the images of the biblical account first appear? I mean, is it something that I know that the reputation of St. Francis of Assisi is that he at least made very popular the practice of venerating the crèche at Christmas time. But do we have St. Francis to thank for introducing this, or simply just making it more popular?
The year was 1223, and it was a village in Italy, and it was a midnight mass, and he had the idea. He was probably an ordained deacon. He had the idea to bring in an ox and an ass to the field where the nativity, where the Christmas mass was being said, and so he did. It was really more of a tableau for people to use their imaginations. It's a long tradition. Francis made it popular because he was popular. He died 4 years after that midnight mass. But there's early evidence way back into the very early Christian era. For example, there's a sarcophagus of a Christian that has carved into it the nativity scene. So they're not three-dimensional, it's a carving into the scene. There's another strain that comes through the Middle Ages, and that is the sanctuary play. They would have put on plays in the sanctuary to educate people who couldn't read. So they would act out different biblical scenes, including the nativity scene. In fact, back in those days, the Christmas Eve, the night before Christmas, was the play of Adam and Eve to explain to people why the redemption took place. It was because the need was because of Adam and Eve. So in the sanctuary, they would put on a play explaining what was going to be happening and why. And one of the props for Adam and Eve play was a fir tree that plunked that down. And they decorated it with apples because they had access to apples, and they hung them all over the tree. And that led to the belief that Adam and Eve, that Eve picked an apple off the tree. Of course, there wasn't any apples, but there were in the play. So with a green tree with red ornaments on it came from that nativity play, allegedly.
Well, that's a fascinating account. It tells us an awful lot, especially about the traditional Christmas colors.
Yeah.
Father, this show includes nativity scenes from across the globe. In fact, I think Antarctica may be the only region that's not represented. So if anybody watching has a crèche from Antarctica that you want to share with visitors, please let me know.
I found one. I wrote to a bishop up there in the far north, and the problem was it was made out of ivory, and you can't import ivory into the United States. So I saw it, but I couldn't. It was against the law, so I didn't want to get arrested. It'd be too far.
But in any case, many of the creches that are on display this year are creches from your collection. And there are creches that are both fine art and folk art. And I know that in a past conversation with you, you once mentioned that the Neapolitan nativity scenes are a classic example of fine art, at least fine creche art. And we have one in the exhibit.
Yes. Now that one was made by rather recently, I think.
Yes,
Like, oh, there it is.
the photos that we're showing now are of the Neapolitan nativity scene that's on display here
Yeah.
at the McGivney Center. Father, this was commissioned for a show in 2014, so it's only 7 years old.
Yes.
But as you can see, it's made in the very traditional manner, the very traditional methods and customs that have existed for centuries, and it was crafted right in Naples.
Yes. It's a family, I think, of people that make Neapolitan creches.
Right.
It's a very the Neapolitan creche became popular in the 18th and 19th century in the Kingdom of Naples. It was a kingdom, and they had a king, and he was Charles VII, and King Charles VII, King of Naples, married a princess from Poland, and she moved into the royal residence, and she brought with her, among other things, her nativity scene, which included 7,000 figures. And so she was a collector. And so she set that up in the royal residence, and she would host people from the Holy Aristoi would come in to see the king's creche, And she also, Amelia, I think her name was Amelia, the princess who married the king's consort. She also set up a business. She was concerned with upgrading industrial things, and she set up a porcelain factory. And they began, of course, training out Neapolitan figures, among other things. So it caught on because the King of Naples was doing this. It caught on, and all of the aristocracy would set up elaborate creches in their homes and have tours all the time. It was a matter of keeping up with the Joneses, and but it spread from there. What's unique about the Neapolitan creche is that it includes obviously the Holy Family and the Magi, but also the townspeople of Naples in the 18th and 19th century. That's unusual. They took the idea of the incarnation and plunked it right down in the middle of their own culture. They claimed the nativity for their own. And that's the theme that runs through all of these creches, that they claim that for their own, whether it be the costuming or the animals or the tradesmen, whatever it is, that they're indigenous. So that the birth of the Christ took place in their culture. Christ came from far all people. And there's such a variety, of course, because there are so many cultures. My friend Anne that I spoke of earlier, she had a saying, God loves variety. Well, that's for sure. If this is any indication of it, these creches. This traditionally a Neapolitan creche has ruins in it. Those are Roman ruins. And the reason is that King Charles VII reigned when archaeology was just coming about. They had just uncovered the ruins in Pompeii. And he had a big interest in that. The University of Naples had a whole department on archaeology, and they were digging over at Pompeii. And one thing they dug up was the ruin of the Temple of Apollo. That's what that is. Those columns are the Temple of Apollo. from Pompeii. And they thought when they were building it, they wanted to make an inscription over the door. And they wanted to say that this will stand forever, something like that. And they went to one of the oracles of Apollo, and they said, no, don't do that. Put on the sign, this will stand until a maiden gives birth to an infant in a manger. And so that's what that shows, that the pagan culture had crumbled, the oracle had taken place, Apollo was gone, and there was the Christian era had begun. Apollo was, among other things, the god of prophecy. So that was his prophecy. And there you see the ruins.
Fascinating. Well, as you say, Father, so many other cultures have done what the Neapolitan Crèche has done by appropriating or claiming the incarnation story for itself. Let's look at some of the creches that are part of your collection that are on display. And this first example is from Germany.
Yes, this is a perfect example of creches I do not collect, because this is a collectible, whatever that is, and I avoid them because I want something that's more indigenous, and I'm not looking for investments or future sales or anything like that. This is Gobio porcelain company, and the same people that make Hummels make these. It's very, very traditional. And the only reason I have it is because a family gave it to me. A household, they were breaking up a household, and this was the family crèche. And so they gave it to me because they knew I appreciated crèches. So that's why I had it. Germany.
Here's another one from Germany.
Yes. I bought this one in Disney World in the German pavilion. Yeah, you never know where you're going to find these things, And this is a Christmas pyramid. It's German. It's from the Western Mountain area where they have the mines, the ore, and in the winter they couldn't do much mining, so they had crafts, and the men would carve these sorts of things. The German Nativity loves things mechanical. Anything that moves, it will catch the eye of a kid. This is the mechanical. It's powered by those red candles you see there, and the heat goes up and it turns that propeller on top of that. Propeller's on a shaft, and those three tiers that you see, they turn with the propeller, so they go around and around, and that, of course, delighted the children. Another aspect is that some say that these were intended initially to be hung from the ceiling, so that it was like a light show with the propeller going around and the candles. It was, like an early disco ball or something like that. German, carved wood. Russia. You see the typical Russian domes, Joseph carrying the lantern, very traditional. But what's a little unusual here is the Christmas tree that's growing there, a fir tree, because they have plenty of fir trees in Russia. But the thing is, the crèche tends to be a Catholic tradition. And the Christmas tree tends to be a Protestant tradition. In fact, in some circles, the Christmas tree is attributed to Martin Luther, that he invented it and brought in the first tree and lit it up and all that. It's the same tradition of St. Francis having invented the nativity scene. He popularized it, Also Russia. Fabric, wool, costuming here is, as you can see, very, very authentic to Russia. The animals, carved wood. Joseph even has his lantern there on the side. You can see the lantern comes from a vision that Saint Bridget of Sweden had once. She had a vision of the Nativity, and in that vision, Joseph was carrying a candle, and he came into the stable and placed it on the ground on the wall, and that became a symbol of Joseph coming in, bringing the light in, and later it turned into a candle, a lantern. I see Mary in this is sitting on a stool. To me, that is a bond stool. That's indicating that this is taking place in a stable, because that's a milking stool, I think. I've seen those in my great-grandfather's barn. He had a little milking stool, but it only had 3 legs, because the reason it had 3 legs is because of the uneven ground. With 4 legs, it was wobbly, but with 3 legs, it was more secure. So that's the Russian crèche.
And yet
Another
one more.
Yeah, these they can be called stacking figures. They're made of wood. They go inside another. I think it's matriska. I think they're called there. Very traditional. You'll see them with all kinds of subjects, including politics. You can find today these stacking figures. You might find Putin and President Biden and Angela Merkel, and they're all stuffed inside this thing. Very thin wood. They can warp easily. You have to keep them very dry, and you can see the different figures, different stages of the story of the Nativity. Hungary. This was done by a professional person in Hungary, a ceramicist, and she researched the clothing style of 14th and 15th century Hungary, and she carefully reproduced them in this. So this is very historically accurate. I noticed that there's a shepherd over there. Notice the hat that he's wearing, a wool hat, and his whole cloak is made out of wool. I think he's a shepherd. Yeah. And there's 3 kings. So that is a modern piece, and it's an accurate portrayal of the costuming. Portugal, specifically the Azores. This shows a number of different Azorean things. One is the basket. That's an industry in the Azores, weaving. That's a willow basket. They grow the willow and such. And there's a traditional Holy Family and the ox and the ass. But on the left, there is a Portuguese marching band. In Azores and Portugal, you just can't have a festa without at least one marching band to go along and stir things up. And so they put a marching band in there. I think that that's from the festa, the Spirit Sanct, the Holy Spirit feast, because they're all dressed in red, but it doesn't matter. They showed up early to put them in the crèche. But the rooster is the one with the story. That's a legend that I showed this to a priest the other day here in my residence, and he said, well, that's in the wrong place. That belongs in with Peter and the cock crowing and the denial 3 times. No, Father. This is another kind of story. This one is that the cock in Bethlehem started crowing not at first light, but at the birth of the light of the world, that he recognized that and started crowing. So that has become, that rooster has become the symbol of the territory of the Azores. I once was in the Azores, and I was staying at a private home. And when I got up, the woman of the house said, well, how did you sleep last night, Father? And I said, oh, it was wonderful. I slept right through. It was just terrific until the cock woke me up. Oh, I'm glad. And we went back to lunch. She said, Father, how do you like the soup there today? I said, oh, it's good. She said, that's the cock that woke you up. I couldn't finish it.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, why me? Belgium. This is made by a high-end vestment company in Belgium. And these are posable figures. If you notice the feet, they're big block feet to hold the figures. I got this from a going out of business sale that was held by a church that was merging with another church. And the people in that parish never liked this anyway because it was just the Holy Family. It was a Portuguese church, and so they preferred the rooster and the marching bands and all that. This they couldn't deal with it. So I came to own it.
And this is quite large too.
This is live. Yeah, you know, the idea of posing the figures any which way, that's ancient. Way back in the Middle Ages, the poorer churches that had statuary could get by a little cheaper if they didn't have the whole thing carved out of wood, but if just the arms and the face, maybe the feet, and then they'd make like a straw-filled doll on the inside and cover it with the vestments. And so that has a long tradition of posable figures. There's an example of it. They figured out that these posable saints, that if you put strings on them, you could march them across. You could have a puppet show for the children out in the square, telling the children. These are the Magi from a larger set, Czech Republic, which is intended as a catechesis for children. The kings come along, of course, on Epiphany. This is one of my favorites because I know the artist Muhammad Amin. He is Muslim, and his family, though, his children and his wife are all Catholic, and the kids go to the Catholic schools. And he runs pottery shops, 3 of them last I knew. And he made this, Mary is reclining. And I find that very touching. And even the way Joseph is sitting, the heart is traditional Ghana. And the camel was obviously made by someone who knows about camels. Normally when we make camels, they have their high head in the air and all that. No, this one is scratching a flea or something on his leg. It's a true kind of camel thing. I asked Muhammad Amin, since he was a Muslim, I said, how is it that you came to be making creches? And his answer was simple. All families are holy, he said. And I said, you've got it. There's Kenya, carved of wood. You'll notice indigenous animals. I see 2 elephants. I think it's a hippopotamus and a giraffe. Carved of wood, and it's showing once again that the culture is claiming the nativity scene. Kenya and Tanzania. This is actually a tribal. It's a Maasai tribe. They migrate. They don't stay in either Kenya or Tanzania. They follow the cattle. The whole culture is built is around cattle. This one, they're wearing red simply because the Maasai really like red cloth. They'll wear other colors, but they're very fond of red. Other interesting thing about this is the jewelry. Both Mary and Joseph are wearing elaborate jewelry around the neck, around the ankles, on the ears, and there's body modification. the ears are extended as they would be for the Maasai people. It's not often that you see body modifications on St. Joseph, but there it is. Another one of my favorites. This shows you how you can find a crèche without really looking for one. I went to the Boston Museum of Art to see an exhibit on the pharaohs of Egypt. Oh, it was very lovely. I was with a priest friend, and coming out, I said, you know, I have the sense that there's a nativity scene around here somewhere. He said, are you crazy? These are the mummies in Egypt. That has nothing to do with the nativity. So I glanced over my shoulder, and they had a storefront where they were selling things from Egypt. Right in the middle was that nativity scene. So you can develop a sense, you know, of what these things are. This
The
one,
angel announced it to you, Father.
yeah, I think that was either that or the PA system. I'm not sure. Traditional clothing, again, Egyptian clothing. I like the colors in this. They're kind of a dulled pastel color. My favorite figure is the shepherd seated on the left. He has 3 sheep gathering around, and it reminds me of a person playing with a bunch of puppies, that they are coming over and he's patting them and talking to them. So that's a man that knows sheep. He's very happy with the sheep. Egypt. It's a rather small in size, South African. It's also tribal. It's Zulu. The figure of Mary, she's wearing a big giant hat, which is the Zulu equivalent of a married woman. Married women would make these very elaborate woven hairdos that go all over the place, you know. And they got tired of that, I guess, and they got these hats. They developed these hats. They just put them on their head. It was much easier. So that's how this married woman appears. Joseph is shown as a man of importance, wearing leopard skins and zebra skins. Zulu tribe, South Africa. India, there isn't a space on this piece of metal that hasn't been ornamented, except in the faces. Absolutely everything. There are rhinestones and little beads and all kinds of decorations. A good indication of the idea of India. All right. Okay. Here we have. This is Indonesia. It's the Asmat, it's a tribe, Asmat tribe, and the way you know that is because who else in the world carves human beings like that? Nobody except that tribe. That's their traditional betrayal of people. So again, they're representing their own particular style. China. This is not well carved. At least the figures aren't. It's hard to tell which is the king and which is the shepherd. Uh, the angels there, those are nicely carved by a more experienced person. This was made by more than one person. And there's the ox has been replaced by a water buffalo. But the secret of this crèche is in the trees. There's a language to the trees. And the 1800s, we understood a language of flowers. Particular flowers and certain colors meant certain things when you sent them. Know if there's any attention to that anymore, but these 3 trees are symbolic in Chinese culture. One is the pine tree, which is longevity, long-lasting, evergreen, and the cherry tree is here, meaning new beginnings, that after the winter is over, you're elated to see the cherry trees blooming, promise and new beginnings. And lastly, in this, there's a plum tree, which has to do with hope and with courage. So it shows the language represented in the trees. Also, this one is Japan. very traditional carving, oversized heads. Notice the kimonos and the band across traditional folk art. These are called kokeshi dolls. Thailand, intricate clothing, also very accurate. The figures represent merchants arriving, and also there are some farmers. But there's something interesting in this. That couple over on the left side, that's an immigrant couple. They're not from Thailand. They're from some other place, and they're visiting. So already they're realizing that the Nativity isn't just for Thailand, it's for beyond their borders. Nepal, this Nativity folds up and it goes right into a storage box, which is the manger itself, the shed. They go in, it's made of corn husk, and there's some wood in it, again, in very traditional clothing. This is made by the Gurlung people, and it shows, for the kings, it shows a Buddhist monk and a Hindu holy man and a Sherpa who belongs to an animist religion, Sherpas. Vietnam, using their traditional skills as a triptych. It has 3 parts. It's black lacquered and painted on top of that. And the figures are inset mother of pearl, or what they call sometimes window pane oyster. And there's the window pane oyster again. From the Philippines. This is the logo for this year's exhibit. To me, this one has a lot of motion in it, also joy. The posture of these figures, this Holy Family, are joyful. You can see Joseph with his hands out and Mary holding up the infant Jesus. I don't know if newborn infants would be held like that, but it makes the point that Jesus is happy. His arms are up and he's laughing. Traditional Philippines wire and shell. Belize. The reason I got this piece is because it's from Belize. I'd never seen another nativity from Belize. It's a little too cute for my style. It's made of mazapan or bread dough, and has all these little flowers and doodads and everything all over it. By the way, these bread dough or mazapan figures couldn't be preserved. They wouldn't last very long. They'd crumble after you made them, until the Peace Corps came in to these regions and introduced polyurethane. And well, now we can have these figures all the way through Christmas. Lets the mice eat them. The mice like to eat these. This one has a story. It's Mexico. It's made out of paper and cardboard. When you move into a new rectory, you know there's liable to be stuff that the priests before you for the last 100 years left behind when they moved on to where they were going. And this is one such thing. I went down the basement of a rectory I had recently moved into, and in the corner was this box that was already wet and soggy. And I picked it up, and that's what was inside. It was a Mexican nativity. So I took it with me when I moved out of that rectory. I didn't leave it behind. It's an example of how people do crafts with any kind of found thing, in this case, seashells. The interesting, for me, the interesting figures are the ox and the ass. They're very cleverly made. Mexican shell art. Mexico again, Los Posados, the procession leading up to Christmas, bringing in the nativity scene. This one is on a truck, a flatbed being pulled by a horse with tires, I don't rubber tires. You can see it's at night because the background has a star and a moon. So they're on their way to church to begin the celebration of Christmas Mass. Also Mexico, traditional tin. It's hammered tin. And very colorful. I don't. The coloration is transparent, translucent, and I don't know what it is. It might just be ink that's put on there, so it sparkles. And I noticed that the donkey is blue and the cow is red. Now, when I was going to preschool, I might decide to paint the grass blue and the sky green. And the teacher would always say, no, 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 that's not how it is. Well, why not? Use your imagination. Peru. There's a priest in residence here who was in Peru as a missionary. And I said, why are Mary and Joseph wearing those ridiculous bowls on their head? And he said, those aren't bowls, those are sombreros. That each region of Peru, the people have different kinds of sombreros. Some might look like boulder hats or the big mariachi kind of thing, you know. But that's a particular area in Peru, probably near the Guatemalan border. It's textile and wire. The clothing that they're wearing, the serape that Joseph has, could be just a miniature of a full serape. And Mary is taking part in weaving things, because you'll see she has a spool of yarn there. And Jesus is there somewhere. He's down in the bottom. This has two names. It's from Peru. The folk art style is called a mate, which is a burnished gourd. It goes back thousands of years, burnishing gourds, decorating them. But then this one has a surprise inside. And it's a nativity scene. These, again, are bread dough. There's something called a retablo, which you might say is like a traveling box. You can use it as a home shrine. You can use it in a religious education class. You carry this under your arm and you come in and you pop it open, and there is something surprise inside to show the kids, you know. So this is also a retablo. It's a gourd. I've used it many times. Right? Look at this nice gourd, kids. Oh yeah, boom. Oh, it's a nativity. Another gourd made in a similar fashion. I think this one is small, and it looks like Peru, but it came from Arizona. How it got in Arizona, I have no idea, but it traveled there. One of my favorites in Santa Fe. This was in an art gallery. It's made by a man of mixed ancestry. And he's reflected that. His name is Lawrence Vargas. He's reflected that. He has Aztec designs down at the bottom. He has Pueblo type pottery, the black fired pottery and the black matte pottery. Those are made with very, very smoky kilns, earth ovens, and he set them again traditionally with stones of turquoise. So he is multiracial, you might say, and he's reflected that in his artwork. So it's very authentic to him. New Mexico, particular, the Pueblos. This one is Cochiti Pueblo. Here's the story. I was out in Albuquerque, and I had my plane ticket. I was just about to fly home, 8 a.m., said my ticket, went to the airport, got all ready. They looked at it and they said, oh, this isn't for 8 a.m., this is for 8 p.m. I had the wrong time. I had a whole day that I had no place to go until the plane took off. So I wandered around and I saw this a trading post. And people were coming and going from the Pueblos, and they were carrying baskets of things. And come to find out, they were bringing in these nativities. And so I got a bunch of them. I'm sure the customers were delighted, but they went right back on the plane at 8 o'clock. The design, the figuration in the design is particular to each Pueblo. And often the kings are carrying some, what we would consider to be unusual thing. We have a potter here, and we have some moccasins, and it looks like some corn being presented as gifts. Also from New Mexico, this one is made out of cottonwood, and it's set on a piece of found wood or driftwood, whatever you prefer. The carvings themselves are quite primitive, probably done by a child practicing to learn the art of how to do that. Now, there was one child, her name was Louise Ortega, that started carving when she was about 13 years old. Her father was teaching her. He was a famous Santero carver of these kinds of figures. And he probably taught her. So the guess is that she always liked to use this driftwood. This may be Luis Ortega Alvarez, early copy. Another Pueblo. See how the designs are different in this one. The gifts are different, mostly, but they're singing. So it's almost like they're singing Christmas carols. It's, of course, made of clay. This is James Pueblo. I believe it's on site. Another Pueblo. I was only at the trading post for about an hour, by the way. I was there all day, but I wasn't. This one is Letta. Also, they're singing. Again, the pottery is traditional to Isleto. Now, the thing with these Pueblos activities is that they developed in the 20s and 30s when the Southwest was becoming a travel destination from people on the East. You know, they had spas and hot springs and big hotels and trains. And so the tourists would start heading out to visit and seizing the day. The Pueblo Indians, these were made for purchase by the tourist coming in. This one is signed Cristela. That means that strictly speaking, it's really not Foca, because you don't sign Foca, the purists say, but rather true Foca is a reflection of the culture and its color and not of the individual, so they don't sign it. Unless, of course, they're going to sell it to a tourist coming by, which happened to be me.
And Father, your stories have been phenomenal. The explanations, the anecdotes, with the exception of that first slide that we shared, the Neapolitan Crèche, which came from Naples, Italy, everything that we've seen is a part of your collection. And you know, there's still many more nativity scenes on display as part of this exhibit. And of course, there's still many more that are part of your collection that are not on display. I want to share for the viewers that this exhibition is ongoing until February 6th. So you have an opportunity to come here in person. The McGivney Center is at 1 State Street in New Haven, Connecticut. It's open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday through Sunday each week from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Visit michaelmcgivneycenter.org in order to learn more details and obtain a timed entry ticket. We're being very conscious of safety during the pandemic. So please visit the website before you come so that we can plan a time for your visit. I also want to say that I mentioned we're open Wednesdays through Sundays, which is true. However, there is an exception. The center will be closed on Christmas Eve, the 24th, and Christmas Day itself, the 25th. I'd like to invite everyone who's watched to come and see the show, share word of the show with friends and relatives, neighbors. Share this video with them as well. We'd be delighted to have you visit, but moreover, we just want to have you have a better appreciation, a better understanding for the nativity story and art. Father Goldrick, any parting words of wisdom?
Well, I'm just thinking the nativity scene in St. Peter's Square this year is going to be from Peru, made in the Andes Mountains in a little village, and it's an example just like this, where the particular culture claims the nativity, and that will be is on display there in St. Peter's Square.
So that's a wonderful example of how the individuals, whether it's the Holy Father himself or those that he trusts to advise him, have selected a nativity scene that comes from a different culture, but is a way for everyone visiting St. Peter's Square in the Eternal City to truly appreciate how widespread the story of Christmas and Christianity itself has gone, and how many different expressions it has in art.
It's also, I could make quick reference to the future of the Crèche. What will it look like in the future as time evolves? And well, there's one example. It's called Haute Sphere. It was commissioned for the Church of Saint Magdalene in Paris, and it is 12 feet tall, and it's a geodesic dome cutaway. It's based on sand. It's made out of porcelain, Limoges, and it's coated with platinum. The stars are platinum, and in the middle there are no figures. It's a disc, and it's a porcelain. They call it it's a sphere, and if you look at it, it is the model of the inside of an atom, and it shows the orbits of the electrons spinning around. So it's a very, very modern, precious metal, all handmade by architects. But the thing is that the center of the disc, the sphere, is absolutely still. There are no neutrons, no protons. It's still, because it's the birth of the Messiah, who is the still point of a turning earth, you know. So it's almost mystical in its presentation. They play Aramaic chants while it's going on, and it's quite something. It was in Los Angeles on display at the cathedral there a few years back. So maybe that's the future.
What a phenomenal description, and how people think and imagine this story to be told. Father, may I ask you to impart a blessing to all of us as we conclude?
Sure. May the blessings of Almighty God come upon you. May the joy of the Incarnation fill your hearts. May the Lord bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Father Timothy Goldrick, and thank you all viewers for joining us for this presentation.